Welcome to Claudia's Reading Corner. This week's selection is another excerpt from Daring a Duke. Quite a good-looking man was George Prestwick. He had black hair and eyes so brown as to be nearly black, finely drawn features, and a lithe form that reminded her a bit of a panther. Of course, he didn't have any bruises on his face, but that was easily remedied, wasn't it? "Huh," she said softly, shaking her head, looking again for a place to put her empty glass. She watched carefully this time and could make out that George did something very subtle involving the angle of his chin and a single eyebrow. The footman, the same one this time, reappeared with his tray. She rid herself of her empty glass and reached for a full one. George took a glass as well, though he did not look at all eager to drink from it. Ah, well, his loss. "Miss Elliot," he said, "I don't know if you are aware, indeed I should be much surprised if you were, but Edenham spoke with Sophia Dalby, and that has, at least lately, resulted in certain highly unlikely marriages being made at what some would say is an alarming speed. My own sister to Iveston, for one." "Oh, I've been made aware, Mr. Prestwick," she said, waving her glass in the general direction of his face. "What you may not know is that I have spoken to Sophia Dalby. I shall not be wed, not to Edenham, not to anyone here." She said it with some pride, a great deal of certainty, and not a little annoyance. "I see," he said, looking down at her, his brow furrowed in concern. Clearly, he was concerned. He didn't want her to marry the most handsome duke in England, did he? Of course he didn't. He couldn't marry Edenham himself, obviously, and his only sister was just this day married to an heir apparent, which would simply have to do, wouldn't it? That die had been cast. If Penelope had wanted Edenham, she should have put her back into it. That's all. "You are confident that Lady Dalby will take your part in this?" Mr. Prestwick asked. "Why shouldn't she? I asked for her help, and she was very glad to give it," Jane said, sounding just the slightest bit soggy to her own ears. She looked at her glass. It was empty. She tucked her chin down and raised both eyebrows. No footman appeared. Stupid English footman. "I take it that no one else thought to talk to Sophia directly when they'd been targeted?" "I don't think so, no," Mr. Prestwick said, a smile starting to replace his frown. Good. He no longer appeared concerned. But she did wish he'd do that dip-lift motion with his face that resulted in a brimming glass of Madeira. "How silly of them," she said. "When trouble comes, one must face it, Mr. Prestwick. One must bring one's cannons round and blow the matches. One must act, Mr. Prestwick." "I completely agree," he said. "What happened after you acted, Miss Elliot? Did the Duke of Edenham simply sink?" "He foundered, Mr. Prestwick. Make no mistake of it," she said, pressing her glass against his chest for emphasis. Rot it, she meant to point to his chest. She did hope she hadn't got wine on his shirt front. Where was the deuced footman? Oh, there he was. She set her glass down with barely a clink and reached for another. George Prestwick raised his sable brows, yet kept his mouth closed. Good man. One didn't need a man who didn't enjoy the benefits of a lovely Madeira at a wedding. Ruined the mood completely. How nice for Penelope that she had a brother who knew how to enjoy himself and was clever enough to allow others to enjoy themselves. Thank you. See you next time.